Errol Amerasekera is a leadership advisor, psychotherapist, consultant, performance coach, and owner of Bluestone Edge. For almost 2 decades, he's worked with executive teams and elite sporting organizations to understand what happens to trust, judgment, and performance when pressure rises. His work has taken him inside AFL clubs, Olympic sport, and leadership teams facing complex change. He's developed a concept of adaptive safety, which focuses on how teams remain honest, connected, and capable of learning when the stakes are high. His new book, From Fear to Flow, The Adaptive Safety Revolution, examines why capable teams can become defensive, controlling, or silent under pressure, and what leaders can do to build cultures that hold when performance matters most. Errol, thanks for joining me today.
It's a pleasure, Brad. Good to be here.
I'm going to just start by saying, how do I pronounce your surname? I feel like I butchered it in that starting point.
Did a pretty good job. I would say Amerasekera, but my ancestors might say it differently. But I'm happy either way.
Thank you very much.
Or you could just say Errol like it's Madonna or Cher or Prince. Take it.
Fabulous. Thank you. So let's jump straight in. Why is it that intelligent people become less honest when the stakes get higher?
That's such a good question. And I think to answer it properly, Brad, let's talk about what it means to be honest and what it takes to be honest in a team environment. So to be honest, firstly, takes some vulnerability because you're sharing an uncomfortable truth or something that's challenging. Could be offering a dissenting viewpoint. The other thing it takes is that you're putting the team before yourself, that the risk of being honest is less than your desire to do what's best for the team. So if you think about what the preconditions for honesty, one is vulnerability. The other one is a sense of the team goals is more important than my personal needs. So then to answer your question more directly, what happens is when there's an atmosphere of fear, a part of our brain called the amygdala, which is the threat detection center, starts to offer a red light. And in that fear condition, with the amygdala firing off, it starts to shut down the part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. So that's the part of our brain that's responsible for executive functioning, for decision-making, for emotional regulation. And basically its job is to keep us safe. That's the whole fight or flight mechanism. So under threat, we go into self-preservation. So in self-preservation, we don't want to be vulnerable, and their own needs are prioritized before the team needs. So it's not even a psychological thing, it's a physiological thing. And human beings are hardwired as a survival strategy. As cave people, you saw a big saber-toothed tiger, you go, my God, forget Brad, I'm getting my bum into the cave. So under threat, we tend to go for our own survival. And so when there's an atmosphere of less safety, the threshold to elicit a threat response is less. So ideally, in a 100% psychologically safe environment, they can tolerate a high degree of threat and pressure before that physiological alert threat detection starts to fire off. To answer your question, so it's like...
I think,
go on. The long way around. So I think if I'm being more direct, I would say people can only be as honest as the environment allows.
And the more threatening the situation, the environment, the more pressure, people are less likely to be vulnerable.
Yes.
And that's biology.
That's biological.
Yeah.
And the cultural piece is, how do we create a culture of safety, which to some extent mitigates or buffers the threat we perceive from the environment?
Yeah.
Or the challenge at hand.
So that vulnerability, honesty, and probably cultural strength is retained in more stressful, high-pressure situations. Is that fair?
Exactly, Brad. And the key is when we go to that threat response, we lose access to our skills and knowledge. So not just to be, we're less able to be honest. Those skills and knowledge we've spent years or decades developing and honing disappear all of a sudden.
Yes.
So working in sport a lot, I refuse to believe a footballer, for example, who spent a whole lifetime honing their skills suddenly loses them in a high-pressure environment, or an executive who spent years to being a really great executive loses their skills in a high-pressure environment. They lose access to those skills.
Yeah, okay. That's important. It's the access to the skills because the fight or flight is kicking in.
Exactly right. And it's basically turning off the part of the brain where those skills or knowledge are actually stored.
So then what happens to teammates who are trying to interact with this person in that situation where their fight or flight has kicked in?
Well, usually it'll be a collective experience because we're all sitting in the same environment as teammates. Now, individually, we have like different threat responses, but I'm also scanning my team going, wow, Brad's freaking out. Where's the threat? Now, Fred says, Errol and Brad are freaking out. There's got to be a threat around here somewhere. Where's the danger coming from? Where's the attack coming from? So that sense of fear can spread through a team really quickly. So we're all like unconsciously like looking at each other for how do they respond to this situation?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's how whole teams can go into like slumps or come out of slumps together. Suddenly Brad goes, it's safe here. Like, okay, Brad's relaxed. His whole physiology, his body language is relaxed. I can relax too.
So we're feeding off one another's interpretation and response to the system.
Exactly. I want to get really nerdy about it. These things called mirror neurons, which are the nervous system actually, without even us realizing unconsciously, will pick up your stress levels and will mirror it unconsciously. So the tricky part is a lot of these things happen below our levels of conscious awareness. And that's where we think, why did we play really well today? Why did we perform really bad yesterday? So the mystery is, how do we solve the mystery of those questions? By seeing what are the behaviours which increase or decrease safety.
So in a sporting team environment, what you're trying to do, which isn't the same as, but there are certainly parallels, I think, to business in a team setting, what you're trying to do is to maintain that vulnerability and that trust level no matter what, no matter how the pressure gauge, let's say, fluctuates.
Yes, and I just tweak that by saying maintain the preconditions for vulnerability and trust.
That's fair, yes.
Right. So I always cringe when I hear facilitators, coaches, leaders say, this is a safe environment, right? Because you can't mandate safety. It's like saying you will love me.
Yes.
Right? You can't like enforce or mandate a feeling. So safety is built like brick by brick by brick, and we can put bricks in, we can take bricks out. So seeing safety as a fluid mechanism that can change not just day to day, but hour to hour, minute to minute is one of the keys to this work.
So psychological safety is a commonly used phrase.
Yes.
Two-part question. First of all, if you could offer your definition of psychological safety for the audience.
Yes.
A, and then B, often it can be used to avoid hard feedback and accountability.
Yes.
Psychological safety. I need to look after this person. Where is that criticism fair, do you think?
Yes. So psychological safety was developed by Amy Edmondson in the late 1990s. And she defined it as the team's ability to take or willingness to take interpersonal risks. So basically, do I feel safe to speak up? Now, I think it's a fantastic concept. It certainly was, and I think still is groundbreaking. One of the things with psychological safety is the way it's been perceived. There are 3 significant misconceptions, and the third one will answer your question.
Mm-hmm.
So the first misconception is we believe it's binary. Either we have it or we don't. Whereas in fact, it's a continuum of safety, which, we're partially safe and partially not safe. The second misconception is that once we get it, it's kind of fixed. Whereas as I just said, it can change day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. I'll unpack it in a few minutes if you like. But the third misconception is to make it synonymous with comfort.
Yes.
So we have kind of like conflated psychological safety with comfort, whereas in reality, they're almost diametrically opposite things. So psychological safety is about change and growth and evolution and challenge, innovation. Psychological safety helps us to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. Like when we prioritize comfort, we avoid discomfort by definition. And as any like gym goer goes, runner knows, leader knows, growth by definition is accompanied by discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have this thing where discomfort means we don't feel safe. We basically stall our growth, we stall our evolution.
Yeah.
So I think a key skill for leaders is how do we discern between the genuine need for more psychological safety versus the natural discomfort that any growth process requires?
It is natural. It is necessary. And
Yeah.
I feel like there's dare I say, a bit of laziness perhaps from leaders, and I'm happy to be corrected, where it seems to be a good excuse to not have the difficult conversations that are necessary in any organization.
Maybe it's laziness. I've got a slightly different take, if I may.
Please.
I think it's how leaders see their role. So if we see our role as only protecting our people, we'll kind of veer towards comfort. If we see our role as developing our people, as one of the key parts of our role potentially, especially in small to medium-sized business, then, and we know developing our people requires some degree of discomfort, then we decide we can bear the discomfort that naturally accompanies growth.
Much better way to put it, I think.
So a simple metaphor, right? If we're in the gym and I'm doing my bicep curls, right? You're going, Errol, buddy, you look like you're really struggling there. You're sweating and you're grunting and you're groaning. Let me take the weights off you. I go, thanks, Brad. That feels better. My arms feel better. My breathing settled down. You're my best friend, right? And you feel good because you've done a nice thing for me. Right. So do I feel more comfortable? Absolutely. Have you robbed me off the growth of that moment? Perhaps. So I think one of the nuances of leadership is how do we know when to push someone for one more rep and challenge them to be a bit more uncomfortable? And how do we know, yep, they're maxed out, hit the showers.
Yeah.
They've already done their maximum today. Go and do an ice bath, go get a massage, go hit the shower.
I think you're right. It's a misunderstanding of the role of a leader or manager.
Yes. And I think, certainly from my experience of small to medium-sized business, it's just one of the challenges because often in small to medium-sized business, the founder or the leader is a subject matter expert. If it's an accounting firm or a mining engineering firm or a plumbing firm, they're the expert engineer or accountant or plumber, right? And so how do you scale learning? How do you say my job isn't to be the expert? My job as the leader or the founder is to hold the system with enough safety and steadiness where the people in the system can find their own wisdom.
Well, that is the job. That is the job. It's been said many different ways. Surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. Surround yourself and grow the people who report to you.
Exactly.
It is the essence. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Exactly. But I think it's really challenging, Brad, because human beings want to feel competent. So if I'm an accountant, I am a really good accountant. I've spent like 5 years at university learning to be an accountant. I might have had very little training in leadership. So at that crossroads, that decision point, do I just give them the answer with my expertise, right? I'm really good at that. Or do I have to use skills that I'm not so sure, that are newer skills or underdeveloped skills of leadership, of mentoring, of feedback that I didn't learn at university or on a trade degree to develop my people? I'm going to default to what I'm good at.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I know my profession really well. So it takes so much discipline and therefore safety to be able to, as a leader or a founder, say, I'm going to be vulnerable and not just give them the answer because I'm the expert, but go to a skill set I'm less confident in. I haven't spent 5 years at university learning, which is like mentoring, feedback, teaching, growing someone, and commit to like developing my team.
Yeah. It's certainly a challenge that we come across in executive and leadership teams often is people trying to be the technical expert, thinking that is the way forward rather than recognizing their job is to coach and grow the people who report to them.
Exactly. I think you've said it really well.
Yeah. So you've worked extensively with elite sporting teams. When a team falls short under pressure, how do you tell whether fear is constraining performance, which is an essential part of your book, or whether some people just aren't simply capable of performing at that level?
I think if a team lacks capability, it will show up in the day-to-day behaviors and outcomes. And then the fix there is more training or more resourcing, more clarity of their role. But what we find is as the pressure rises, that's when capability drops off. That's back to what I said about they lose access to their skills. So the fear and the amygdala shutting off the prefrontal cortex is what's causing the lack of capability and performance versus the capability itself. So for example, and you'll see it in like team meetings where agreement will come a bit too easily and a little bit too fast.
Yeah.
That's a sign of fear, where people will ask a question, but it's actually a statement, because it's too scary to ask a question. It'll be where the post-meeting gossip is more honest than the in-meeting conversation.
Yeah.
They're all signs that fear is subtly pervading into your team. And the thing with fear is it's really subtle. It's not like conflict usually. It doesn't kind of announce itself. It's people just like going for like self-protection and impression management. And couching what they say, being a little less bold, being a bit less honest. It's like people like shutting down usually or in total paralysis. It's a subtle withdrawal of your opinion, your perspective of how you take risks.
But some people, to use the AFL as an example, some people, myself, for example, I would not be capable of playing at the AFL level. Now, maybe that's because I don't have the muscle twitch fibers, the aerobic capacity physically or whatever it might be.
Yes.
I'm not capable at performing at the AFL level. And so how can you tell if it's fear? This is the key to that question, right? How does a leader distinguish, and I realize I'm bouncing between metaphors, between fear is constraining this team's performance and I need to act on this versus this person within this team or this group of people, which is this team, they just can't perform at the AFL level.
Okay. Let's bring it back to the individual. So in your case, right?
Yeah.
If you're out in the field with Fremantle Dockers at the moment, right?
Mate.
Yeah. You'd be out of your depth at a training run.
Yes.
In a practice game, in a low pressure game, and definitely in a high pressure game, right? It'd be totally evident that you haven't got the skills, the capability required to perform at that level. Now, a different version of Brad runs on, plays a good training game, right? Can play well in a low pressure game. Come to finals time, come a close game, those skills go. That means you had the skills, the capability in a low pressure context, but as the pressure rises, you have less access to those skills.
Yes.
Now it's fear, not capability. And the same metaphor example, if you like, holds equally true for a team. Those teams that can perform when there's less pressure, the going's good, you can assume they're capable. But as the pressure rises, as the capability drops off, now as they've lost access to those skills, then it's a fear coming into the team.
Yes, yeah. This episode is brought to you by Evolution Partners, where we help leaders to confidently build enduring great companies using our proven, structured, strategic planning process that ensures you build and execute the right plan to build the business that you want and the life that you want. Check us out at evolutionpartners.com.au. And you can also check out our books, Made to Thrive, which is about the 5 roles of a CEO, becoming a great CEO rather than just a good CEO in your business. Second is Onboarded, which is about hiring and onboarding great people, making sure that you give yourself the greatest chance for people to succeed in your organization. And then third is Bigger Isn't Better, Better is Better, which is about building a business that is better rather than bigger. It's not about building a little business. It's about building a business that compounds, a business that you can actually fall in love with again. So when we think about this model and this model of adaptive safety,
yes,
and psychologically safe,
yes,
what can a team do with adaptive safety, this model that you've built here, that a well-led, psychologically safe team still can't do?
I think, like, again, I want to stress that I think psychological safety is an amazing concept. And what I've tried to do is not develop a new idea, to build on the foundation of psychological safety. There's a couple of fundamental differences I see. Psychological safety is, do I feel safe to speak up? Adaptive safety, if I just define adaptive safety, from my work, it's the team's capability to maintain conditions of trust, connection, and inclusion as conditions and challenges shift and change. So adaptive safety is, while psychological safety is felt, adaptive safety is built. So the question is, how do we as a team continually create conditions of trust, connection, and inclusion? And the key difference is what I call micro-behaviours. The little things we do as team members and leaders that tell the rest of our team how safe it is. And the micro-behaviours we do will build or erode safety in 30 seconds. So if I'm the leader of the family, I say, hey, I think we should go in this direction, right? And you say, Brad, but Errol, have you thought about this, right? Then my response in the next 30 seconds dictates how safe my team feels. If I go, no, Brad, I'm the expert, we're going this way, I just shut you down.
Yeah.
Well, what else do? I send the message that it's not okay to challenge me as the leader. Now, option B, I say, hey, Brad, what a great idea. I hadn't thought about that. Let's explore your idea.
Yeah.
Right. Now, what we're doing is we're tracking the subtle shifts, the moment-to-moment shifts in trust, connection, and inclusion. And we're noticing which behaviors increase those and which behaviors or micro-behaviors decrease those. And then our job is simple. Do more behaviors which increase them and less which decrease them. So how do we reward those behaviors? Reward, support, encourage those behaviors which increase those three things, and resist, stand against, hold accountable those behaviors which decrease safety. So if in a team meeting, you roll your eyes, I speaking, oh, here he goes again, right? If that's not addressed in real time, the safety in that team drops. Now, one eye roll, one deflecting a challenge isn't going to make or break safety, but it's the accumulation of those micro behaviors over days, weeks, months, years that tells a team how safe it is to speak up, to take a risk, to be vulnerable, to try something new, to ask for help.
And so how should a leader respond to an eye roll in the example that you just provided and build on those small moments and not erode psychological safety, yet hold people accountable to what is probably unacceptable?
Exactly. And I think a key skill is building the team's ability to track safety, because we all feel it. We just feel like the anxiety goes up. We catch our breath. We hold our breath. We feel nervous. So I would say, okay, team, time out. Who just felt safety shift downwards a little bit? Yeah, we felt a little bit more nervous, a little bit less safe. Great. What behavior did you notice caused that shift? Oh, yeah. Michelle rolled her eyes. Okay, Michelle, okay. I know you didn't mean to have that impact on the team. And maybe something else to say which you disagree with what someone else said. But let's try to keep our feedback direct rather than this passive-aggressive kind of eye rolling. Now, there'll be a stylistic difference and a context difference in how leaders approach that moment. But naming it in real time builds that team's capability to link the behaviors team members exhibit with how they feel safety shifts in the moment.
How do you bridge that gap then? Because another thing that you talk about is then people go, like Michelle goes into the hallway after the meeting and has a commentary on the event that occurred in that meeting. So as a leader, how do you manage that, let's say off the pitch or in the hallway is the correct terminology?
Yes.
Event.
Again, it depends on the culture of the team and how safe it is. Now, in a really safe team, hypothetically, you could say, hey, Michelle, I know you didn't mean to roll your eyes and decrease safety, right? But I'm guessing something upset you. Or disagreed with something someone said, right? How about you say it directly to us, right? Now, Michelle might go no, I'm fine, right? Then the follow-up question is, if you did disagree with someone, do you feel safe enough to say it aloud? And then you'll see her go, now he's on to me. Okay, if you don't feel safe, Michelle, that's on all of us. That's not just on you. Okay, team, how are we contributing to Michelle not feeling safe to be direct in her criticism of someone or a difference of opinion?
So it's really just stopping the meeting, breaking it down and discussing it, to your point, in real time, but moreover, discussing it in a way that the leader is observing and constructing what's really happening in this situation.
That's great.
And how are we making this happen ourselves?
That's great. And again, that sounds simple, right? But when we have a 1 hour team meeting, once a week with 6 items to get through, do we stop the meeting to do that 5-minute little intervention?
And that's not what they teach you in accounting or plumbing school.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Now, and I think with the book at the start, I say the one thing I want to debunk is that culture work, working on culture, happens at the offsite, happens at the pre-season camp, happens at the workshop, right? We've all done those workshops. People are vulnerable and honest and breakthroughs and come back in 2 weeks later, nothing's changed. So how do we weave culture work into the rhythms of business? So for example, if you don't want to come in with a Michelle eye roll in real time, you could do every team meeting. The last 5 minutes with a 5-minute debrief with 3 questions. In our team meeting today, where did connection strengthen? Where did it weaken? 1 question. Whose voices didn't we hear? Now, what do we learn for next meeting? So you're building the team's reflective ability as a skill. And I feel like with how fast business moves today, I read some research, Brad, a few months ago that said something like they interviewed owners and leaders in small to medium-sized businesses, so your viewers. This was in 2024, I think the research was. And 3 out of 4 leaders said their business has changed more in the last 4 years and the last 20 years.
I'd agree with that.
So the pace of business is just getting faster and faster and faster. If that's like AI or digital or customer expectations. So for small and medium-sized business, I feel like one of the key capabilities, can we adapt and learn? And that reflecting on our team meeting for 5 minutes every week is a muscle. And like any workout, you do it once, not much happens. You do it every week for 6 months, that team gets pretty good at reflecting on its own process. And then they can learn and correct in real time. So you mentioned sport and business about half an hour ago. The thing which sport can do really well, because as a game next week, you have a 1-week performance cycle. You have a week to fix what didn't work last week. So they're very good often at learning and debriefing.
Yeah.
Whereas business, if it's a quarterly report or a 6-monthly report, there's the luxury of having that time till the next report comes out, the next game comes out. But if we kind of infuse what sport does really well, how do we debrief every week? Even if it's 5 minutes after our team meeting every week. How do we do it after a major project? Do a deep learning debrief where we don't just look at project timelines and budgets. We look at the relational part of the project. Where did trust break down? Where did trust really get leveraged? Whose voices didn't we include? Where did connection fall apart? Where was collaboration really good? Often with projects, we review the process part of the project. We don't review the relational side, which is the cultural side of the project.
How does a leader know when enough challenge has been heard and it's time to make the decision? Because sometimes we've heard the views, we understand everything, and there is a different layer of responsibility that forces a decision to be made. And this is in the context of, you argue that fear makes teams seek certainty and narrow their thinking down. So again, the question, how does a leader know when enough challenge has been heard and it's time to make the decision?
It's a great question. For me, I'm going to be really specific here for a change. I think there are 2 really clear safety nets. One is just before you make the decision. It's like anything we've missed here. Who sees a risk we haven't seen yet? Fred, haven't heard your thoughts. Anything you want to add to this? So you're double checking. Everyone in the room has had a chance for their input, right? That's the first safety net. Then after the decision and you start executing that strategy, you watch for engagement levels. And if people are disengaging, one reason is that they didn't feel included in the decision. Hey, Brad, you're a bit off today. Want to double check as we're making the decision, did we make sure we heard your perspective? Now, again, that takes an extra 5 minutes in a busy schedule. But I would rather that than that person feels disgruntled or left out. And over time, this engages further and further and further. Or they see a risk that we aren't seeing, that bites us in the bum down the track. So is the extra 5 minutes worth it? In my opinion, absolutely. But those 2 safety nets, just before and just after the decision is made, ensures everyone's on board. Everyone feels like they've been heard.
It's a hard one, right? Just getting very comfortable with knowing, okay, there is an urgency to make a decision here. When someone challenges the CEO and the room goes quiet, there's something that's happening there. What should the CEO be doing in the next 30 seconds?
Be curious about the silence.
It's a good answer.
I often say all communication is communication, even though communication is communication. So the silence is telling us something. We just aren't sure what it is. So you wait 30 seconds, the room's still dead silent. The CEO could say something like, okay, I asked a question 30 seconds ago, no one's responded. Is that because A, you're all bored? B, this is like not relevant to your roles? C, you don't feel safe to say something? Now, with each of those options, the CEO is scanning for like non-verbal feedback or communication. And one of those will bite. It's like fishing. Cast there, cast. Okay. Is it because you're bored? No. Is it because it's not relevant? No bites there. Is it because you don't feel safe? There'll be a few head nods. Okay, you don't feel safe. Let's talk about that.
What's another word for you don't feel safe? So can you use a different phrasing for me to understand that a little bit better?
I mean, because why? Is it the terms confusing or is it a scary term?
No, because in some of the teams that I've worked with, people will not react to that well. They will, is there an adjunct word? Is there a synonym or something that will do the same thing? Because to not feel safe, it may unlock biases in the person who's responding to that.
I mean, this is purely an Errol style thing, right? As a coach, consultant, leader, is it because I don't feel safe with the word or don't feel comfortable with the word?
You just have to elaborate, because I don't or they don't.
They don't. They said they have a reaction to the word safe, right?
I think they feel like it comes loaded.
Great. Then let's talk about the loading. I don't want to I want to build a team that can be direct.
Yes.
Right. And if we start sugarcoating stuff and avoiding where things are loaded, we miss growth opportunities.
Yes.
So I would gently unpack with that group or that person why they feel that word is so loaded. Now, I would say, Brad, maybe in the past that word's been used against you. That makes sense. Maybe you have worked previously in really unsafe environments. That makes sense. Maybe you've worked where like not speaking up cost you your job or speaking up cost you your job. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's understand what creates the loading, because I don't want to be tiptoeing around this thing for the next 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the coach in me that won't shy away from a growth opportunity, but wants to, with a growth mindset, wants to hold those people and help them lean into that, as opposed to outsource that discomfort to a different word, but we don't address the loading thing because it'll come up in other ways.
Yes.
That's a symptom of something deeper, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So let's keep exploring and being curious why those people, why that person feels like word is so loaded. There's a huge story behind that.
Yeah.
That I want to know about as a leader.
I love your curiosity. I think that you're leaning into the curiosity as we're walking through these things, which is great.
And I think that's a key skill for leaders, because when the pressure builds and the pace of business goes faster, we tend to veer towards or default towards more certainty.
Yeah.
And being curious is entertaining the uncertain. I'm not sure why we're doing this, but let's explore it together.
Yeah.
So again, the discipline to like manage our own anxiety as leaders. Now, if I was going to say one thing to your viewers who are leaders, I'd say your ability for yourself to stay centered, to manage your own anxiety and need to control or withdraw or push or pull, that's critical for this work.
Yes.
Because your team's watching you. And if you're pushing, they're going to feel nervous. If you're withdrawing, they're going to feel nervous. If you can be steady and centered in the face of like challenge and disaster and fast moving things, they go, okay, Errol, the leader, is like centered and steady and safe. So that means we're going to be okay too.
Yeah.
That enables you to maintain a curiosity to the big picture. Take the extra 5 minutes to like explore something with someone. If our own anxiety takes over, that goes through a team really quickly and it shuts down curiosity and creative thinking and innovation.
Yeah. Awesome. So what measurable change tells a CEO that adaptive safety is improving performance instead of just making the team feel better?
There are a number of like metrics we can use and the diagnostics we can use. That's in the book. I talk about that quite a lot. Simple things like when a mistake is made, do we just ask what happened or do we keep exploring why it happened?
Curious.
Can people be more direct, be more honest? Can we give and receive constructive feedback? Or do we get defensive? Can team members take a risk? Can they challenge each other and not shut down? These are all the signs that when safety is present, teams exhibit naturally. So again, rather than saying this is a safe space, right, we have built that safety over time. So now our team can give constructive feedback, can be honest, can be direct, can challenge a colleague, can be vulnerable and say, I don't know. I'm confused. This feels uncertain to me. So that's really clear behavior. And obviously the opposite behaviors indicate there's less safety present.
Yes.
And as we become more adaptively safe, all those behaviors should strengthen. And one of the keys is how well are we learning? How fast can we adapt? Can we adapt in real time? Now, a lot of leaders I speak to, I'm sure your clients too, Brad, will say, we do a 3-year strategic plan. It's obsolete in 6 months, right? Can that team adapt on the run? Can an AFL team change strategy like at halftime over mid-quarter? Because the data shows, this isn't quite working. We've got to change something. So teams that are very safe can learn fast, and then the lag time between the learning and the implementation is really fast.
Yes.
So if we learn stuff, but it's not implemented, that indicates lack of safety.
Yep.
And adaptability. So how do we shorten the time between insight and action? That's a really good measure of safety, actually, and learning ability.
Mm-hmm.
The shorter the time between insight and action, insight and change, you got a more adaptable team and a better learning team, if you like.
And I guess that would be my observation in the teams I've worked with that are high performing. There's a high level of trust, and so it's definitely been my anecdotal experience.
And there's a bunch of research that says trust, connection, inclusion are like massive drivers of performance. So I think there's this like misconception that culture or stuff is like a soft skill, and I am absolutely about like making more money, making more sales, winning games of football or cricket or netball, whatever it might be. I'm absolutely about that. That's just a different route in my mind.
Yeah.
That brings back our humanity and our connection and our relationships, and it makes them the drivers of performance. I think traditionally, we're often driven performance in a way that's kind of excavative. We kind of draw something out of people and spit them out the other end.
Yeah.
Right. That creates burnout and and turnover of staff and disengagement and all that sort of bullying stuff. So creating a more adaptively safe culture re-centers humanity and relationships at the center of performance and uses those to drive performance in a much more sustainable way, a much more humane way, I believe.
Very nice. As we move to close, what is a book that you would recommend for our audience?
I happen to have it right next to me, Brad. It's a book called The Practice of Adaptive Leadership by Heifetz. It's written in 2009, but I think it's as relevant now, maybe more relevant than it was when it was written, because what they talk about in the book is how, as leaders, do we look for the adaptive solution versus the technical solution. So that's like the innovative, the groundbreaking solution, not just the technical fix.
Yes.
And the culture it takes to have that adaptive solution. So
Very nice.
I think it's one of the best books for leaders I've read. I read quite a few. Look at my bookshelf behind me. Probably same as you and your bookshelf. But I think it's the most practical and it's the most relevant for our times, even though it's like 17 years old.
Very nice. How can people learn more about you and the work that you do?
My website, errolamerasekera.com. There's a bunch of stuff on there about the work I do, my book and videos and stuff like that, and a bunch of blogs. Feel free to reach out to the website. Happy to answer any questions.
What haven't we covered off today that you'd hoped to cover off?
Great question. One of your questions was like, in a 50-person business with no HR function.
Yes,
right?
And I felt that we'd covered that off, but I'm happy to dive into it.
Well, I think we kind of have. The only thing I'd say is even the question like reflects our bias, that this work lives with HR. Well, this work belongs to people and culture, the people and culture team. What I say is with the cultural buck stops at everyone. Everyone in the team, from the CEO down to the janitor and across the breadth of the organization, is responsible for culture. And the best teams I know are very clear. Everybody has their technical role, PR, the position description, or the pay to do. They have a cultural role too. So as that manager of like finance, what are your cultural responsibilities that sit alongside your technical job of being a finance manager? So, the final thought would be like, no, the cultural buck stops at everyone.
Very nice. Very nice. Errol, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. It's been a fascinating conversation. Loving the way that you intuitively apply curiosity to lead answers so often, and some great work. The book, again, is From Fear to Flow. The Adaptive Safety Revolution, How to Build Teams That Connect Strongly, Learn Deeply, and Deliver Under Pressure. Errol, thank you again for sharing your wisdom with our audience today.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks for your time and thanks for your questions. They've been really great questions. And obviously you've done your homework with the book and my work, so I really appreciate that. But I really enjoyed your questions and our discussion. It's been really, really interesting and fabulous. Thanks, Brad.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. If you'd be kind enough to leave a review for the podcast, that'd be really helpful to other like-minded entrepreneurs, and then we can grow our community. If you want to find out more about our guests, head over to evolutionpartners.com.au/podcast, where you can find show notes and other additional reading. Hope to see you back next week. Until then, keep thriving.